Boone. Thank you for interviewing with me today.
Thank you.
So, I wanted to talk to you because you have been living on would you call it an intentional community or a sustainable community? It's kind of one and the same. No?
Intentional, yeah.
Intentional?
Yeah.
Okay, you like that verbiage more?
Well, I guess that. So when you say sustainable, what does that mean to you?
I think it means like a community like based in trying to live as sustainably outside of like the system as possible, kind of like growing their own food. Yeah, like water, rain catchment, like focusing on those types of things.
Cool. And so by that definition, then sure, we would be sustainable. But
okay.
For me, I read that like. I try to keep that word very strictly defined, and like for me, being sustainable is like, can you support yourself off your land base? And in that regard, we are not sustainable.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like we run a business because we still buy a shitload of food. You know, the food comes in on the trucks, and like we have trucks of our peanut butter going out. And so while we do grow a lot of our own food, we're sitting in one of our gardens right now. We definitely don't grow all of our food. I guess I would say we're self-sufficient, and as in we financially support ourselves, and like we're not relying on the government or anything. But we are self-sufficient, but not self-sustainable. And I think that's, for me, it's important because like you hear all these people like sustainable this, sustainable that, but it's just become a buzzword and it doesn't actually mean anything. Like true sustainability is really hard to achieve, and like pretty much no one's doing it. Like I don't know of a place that's like actually self-sustainable. Like I mean, everything is relying on capitalism, and yeah, it's just I don't know of any place doing it. It's hard.
Well, at least there's people like you in places like this that are trying to move in the right direction, I feel like. And so you live, it's called East Wind Community. And when was that founded? Or like, when did it start?
I want to say 74, I'm pretty sure.
1974?
1974, I think we're 47 years old.
Nice.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. And you have lived here for how many years?
Basically 5 years.
5 years. And what is your daily life like at East Wind?
Well, one of the things I very much like about living here is that my daily life is not too regular. I do different things, and I like that variability and variety. So the main thing I've been doing for the past 3 months is building a new building. We were mandated to install a flush toilet for our factory by the Missouri Health Department, and so we built a new building to house this toilet, and along with some washers and dryers to keep the water flowing. So basically, I've been building a building from like ground zero, from very start to very finish, and I'm almost done with that. And then,
did you have any building skills before coming here?
No.
Wow. Yeah.
Pick that all up here. I work. So I'm one of the building maintenance managers, and then the other building maintenance manager is this wonderful woman named Becky. And she's the boss. So like we're like co-managers, and she's the boss, you know. And yeah, I've been working with her for probably more than 2 years now, and we've done a lot of construction projects around community. And yeah, we work really well together, and we do good work. And so yeah, I've become very handy, and I picked it all up here. Like in terms of practical skills, like it'd be hard to beat East Wind. Like you can come here and learn how to do anything. Like there's people who know how to weld, and we have welding equipment, so we have a freaking forge, like a blacksmith's forge. So you can we have like all the infrastructure, metal shops, wood shops, and people who have the skills. And so yeah.
And how many acres is this property?
I think it's probably safe to say about 1,000.
About 1,000?
Yeah. We own, I think, about 1,000 acres or so. So most of my days lately have been going into this building, but then usually on Wednesdays I make cheese, usually either Parmesans or Mozzarellas.
Yeah.
Yeah. have very successful dairy here, which is more than enough milk, so we have to preserve it. So cheese making and yogurt and stuff. And then I work in the factory some, and just do other odd jobs. So yeah, my daily life's pretty varied, but I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, what was your journey to find Eastwind? Like, what called you to one of these intentional communities?
It's actually kind of a long story. I will tell the short version of it, but there was a big turning point in my life when I had just turned 21, and I went to my first music festival, which was Bonnaroo in 2007. And while I was there, I was like, why don't we live like this all the time?
I've had that same thought at festivals. So I'm like, we can do it.
We can do it. You know, and like obviously you can't be on vacation all the time.
Right.
You know, like say you can't like just be partying or whatever. But and so I had that, and then on the last night there, I had a mystical experience, and I had never had anything like that before, and it really made me like just kind of question everything. And so I started over from ground zero, kind of, and rebuilt my conception of things. And one of the immediate consequences of that was like, I want to live in community. And then it was like a massive download where it's like kind of like on the emotional level where I just had this drive to live in community kind of from that point onward. And so I did research on different intentional communities, and I was gonna move to one, probably when I was like 22 or 23. But I fell into, I answered a Craigslist ad to become a ballroom dancer with no experience.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, and so I kind of fell into this like 5-year career teaching ballroom dancing for Arthur Murray's. So that was kind of like a pause, but I grew a lot as a person through that. And I think I'm a much better communitarian for that experience.
Totally.
Yeah, and so
things never for nothing.
Yeah, and I tried at 2 different studios, and I never really was all that successful at either one of them. And I took it. I was like, all right, this is not my path, and I'm gonna return to this thing. And like, I'd always wanted to live in a community. The ballroom thing was just gonna like kind of be first, and like, well, this is time. And then but like basically, the driving is there's so much unnecessary suffering in this world, and like a lot of that is due to competition, which is mostly embodied as capitalism. And there's so much harm done, and like you can just cooperate, and so many things work better. And so like when I first was thinking along these lines, it's like I grew up in the suburbs in New Jersey, and like probably every other house has a push lawnmower, or like every house has a push lawnmower.
Right.
And you use it 2 hours a week, or less, or whatever, and like it's just dumb. It's just like inefficient when one lawnmower could service 50 houses. Like if you just share it,
That's so true. That's like a beautiful example.
And there's this economy of scale that just makes a lot of sense at this like, and this is also how we were ancestrally. Like we lived in tribes, and like spent most of our time in like what they call bands, which are like 30 to 50 people. Like that was like the moving group was the band, and like so that's ancestrally what we were, but also just like makes so much sense. Like here we have community meals, like they cook dinner every night and usually lunch at noon, and you can put like let's say 10 man hours into it and feed 70 people, but like when I lived in Babylon, I'd have to spend, if I was going to cook for myself, I'd have to spend like a half an hour or an hour cooking, depending on how fancy, and I'm a lazy cook, so I normally would do easier stuff than that, but like just cooking for one is just so inefficient.
Right. I totally get that. There's like volunteer opportunities I felt like that I had in like Thailand, where it was like they would make like all of the rice for that day for like all of the people, and had all the food from the garden, and it was feeding everybody.
Yeah, so I had that like kind of emotional, like we should just live like this all the time, and then it makes logical, rational sense too. It's like this alignment, and also on top of it, like I personally see the way the world is heading. We're headed towards collapse. So, and the big driver is capitalism, like which is in part driven by the way our money system is, that we were talking about earlier,
Right.
like the debt base. But basically, it builds an imperative for growth into our materials economy. And like every year more and more trees have to get chopped down, more fish have to get pulled out. Like it's like it has to be more every year,
Right.
or else the whole thing falls apart. And so we're reaching, and like you can't grow infinitely in a finite system, and like our planet is pretty finite. And so what's happening now is our economic necessity for growth is running into the limits of what growth is possible, and that's why all our the whole planet's breaking down, and we're we're cutting down the rainforest, and all that, like, and so to not be a part of that destructive world machine was very important to me. And like we're still plugged in, like we run a business and trucks come up and down the road, and we still participate in capitalism. So we have not done. This is what I was saying earlier about the sustainability. Like we're not, we're still part of the system. If you're part of the system, you're not actually sustainable because you're relying on the system.
But I feel like you are living more close to the land, which is kind of what it's all about too, is figuring out your relationship. Like we were born on planet Earth to learn how to live in harmony with it, not to create our little boxes to live outside of it and drive our cars and not go outside all the time and buy food from the grocery store. Like it's it doesn't make sense. It's not sustainable. It's not gonna lead us anywhere good. And people and communities like this are really trying to bring it back to the basics, I feel like. And you have like you do like composting your own human waste, which is a huge thing.
No, we do a lot. I'm just
Yeah.
like I feel it's important to recognize that distinction. But yeah, no, we do. I mean, basically, my reason for coming here was to kind of a short way to put it is I don't think it's possible to practice right livelihood in mainstream society because like capitalism is just so inherently exploitative and extractive and damaging. And so like, even if you're just working some normal job, like you're buying gas, and like oil was the reason we invaded Iraq. There's so many externalities that we don't see.
Right.
But like I mean, basically the U.S. is very it's an economic bully, and like we cause a lot of harm overseas so that we can have cheap stuff. And so like as long as you're buying food from the grocery store, you're part of that system. You're causing that harm. And so yeah, a big part of coming here was to minimize as much as I could my role in that. And so like in general, my footprint is much reduced here.
Oh, sure.
We 70 people, we share, like I think we probably have 8 or 9 cars, and we share them, and we ride share a lot. And so I'll often go weeks without getting in a car. And our electricity consumption, I did a little economic analysis of Eastman a while ago, and even with running our factory, we still consume like per capita 2/3 of what the average American consumes. Like we heat a lot of our buildings with firewood that we take dead standing trees and fell them and then chop them up. And yeah, I mean that's a sustainable energy source as long as you're not taking more trees than grow in a given year. Like that's that is a sustainable practice. Rocket mass heaters, we don't have any, but if you're watching and you're interested, rocket mass heaters. It's a thing in
rocket mass heater.
Yeah, and it's a way to burn wood very, very efficiently. Like it burns almost all the carbon. Yeah. So it's a very energy efficient way to burn wood. And basically you have all this piping that you pack with like clay that hold heat, and then you run it for a while. The stove heats up the clay, and the clay just like is slowly radiating heat for like a long time. And so it's a very energy efficient way to heat a space. We don't have one though. have a dream of building a little tiny house here. Like we call them personal shelters, and there's a couple around. And then yeah, if you build one, you get first dibs on it. So yeah, that's my so that's a dream here. And I would probably install a rocket mess here. So.
I feel like community is the way to go. Like it's sharing resources, sharing your gifts, sharing your talents, everyone coming together, realizing that we don't need each thing for ourselves, and learning how to live with the land in harmony. How is there like a resource for like finding more intentional communities
There is.
for anyone who would be interested?
Yeah, the big online directory is, I forget the name of it, but it's just ic.org. It might be intentionalcommunity.org. Yeah, but just ic.org, and there's a list of all different kinds and shapes of intentional communities. And then Eastwind is a part of the far smaller Federation of Egalitarian Communities. And so we have two sister communities in Louisa, Virginia, Twin Oaks, and Acorn. And so the three of us kind of are the backbone of this FEC, and then there's kind of like some more satellite communities around there. But yeah, our part of that is just to foster more communities forming, especially that are egalitarian, and like basically by that we really just mean income sharing. Like that's like basically the main criteria to be in the FEC. But yeah, ic.org is the big one.
Sweet. Also, you have a blog, right?
I do. If you go to boonewheeler.com, that's my blog. I don't post all that often, but yeah.
You talk about concepts and more things about.
Yeah, I mean, my basic message, and so most of the blog posts are just like permutations of this, or like more like concrete examples. But like the way we're currently collectively living on this planet is not sustainable, and what that means is it can't continue. And so one way or the other, we're going to have to change the way we are on this planet as a species collectively. And we can either change the hard way when we run into those limits to growth, and all our systems that are based on growth break down,
right?
And that will look very, very bad. Or if we, I mean, a lot of people think it's too late to do this. Like we can't stop the collapse, but like what you can do is cushion it. And so the more people that are pursuing alternative lifestyles, especially with an eye to like living within the limits of the planet, and like seeking out that sustainability where you really are you're just part of the flow and you're not extracting from it. And so the more people who shift, the crash will be less hard, and there'll be more people to rebuild what comes next. And so my main message on my blog is basically I challenge the kind of dominant narrative that we were all indoctrinated with growing up, from school and parents and teachers and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, just demonstrating, these things that they like kind of implied, they're not true, and encouraging people to quit their jobs and start growing food.
Yes! More producing, less consuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now I have a series of fun questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite way to connect with nature?
Ooh, my favorite way to connect with nature. I have two. One, we have a beautiful creek, and so just going down there and being in the creek is fantastic. And then we also have about 700 acres over on this side of our property that is like an unofficial wilderness preserve, basically. And so just walking around out there, like mushroom hunting or just hiking around in the woods is very, very nice.
Yes. What do you do well, I guess this whole conversation is what you do personally to help the environment is by living at Eastwind. But what do you think that others can do?
A little thing, basically, a
What do you think
really
others
good yardstick, and this is very hard. So, like, I mean, any progress you make towards this goal is good because it's very hard. But basically, because the global economic financial system is extractive and exploitive and damaging, the less you need to use money, the better you're doing. So like that's the so like you need money to be able to meet your needs. You want a roof over your head, you probably have to pay rent, or you have to buy a place. And then you want to eat, you have to go to the grocery store. And so all of our needs are mediated through money, and that's how the system controls you. Because if you don't have money, you can't eat food. Like you die. Like you're forced to work on. It's like, or else you don't eat.
Right.
But you can. There's other ways to get food other than going to the grocery store. And so, just like as an example, the more of your own food that you produce, the less you have to buy, and the less part of the system you are. So the general rule of thumb is figure out how to use less money. So meet your needs outside of the money system, and like that'll just automatically move you into good directions.
Bada bing, bada boom. And go outside more. Maybe that's just me. All right. Well, thank you so much for
welcome.
interviewing with me.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah. And just want to say hello, Buddha.